Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here at Tromful Reads, and in this video, I'm going to start trying to catch up on my monthly wrap-ups, and this is going to be my February 2020 wrap-up. I see, so that's what, February, March, April, May? I'm like 4.5 months behind, so yeah, that's pretty bad. So, I'm kind of changing up the way I do my TBRs. If you watch my previous TBR video for June, I think kind of in the same mindset, I'm going to start changing up how I do my wrap-ups. Probably what I'll do is blast through them pretty quickly and then just talk about maybe like the 4 or 5 that I like either really enjoyed or that I want to talk about the most for whatever reason and stuff. Probably won't be as pertinent to this video because I only read 7 books in February, so it's definitely one of my weakest months in a long time. I think when I looked at the stats, it's like the second worst month I have since started booktube, but quarantine over the past couple months has more than made up for it with like my new hours and then when I wasn't working, when I was unemployed and stuff. So definitely made up for some lost ground there. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get started with the ones I don't have physical copies for. Okay, my least favorite book was probably Wooly by Ben Mesrich, or Mesrich. Can't remember if it's Mesrich or Mesrich, but essentially this book is kind of like a journalist investigation of kind of all the research and the study of the project going on, trying to revive woolly mammoths. It sounds like a really cool concept, except the writing was just kind of like bleh. And it's kind of like almost like a mini biography of Eric Church, who's kind of like the leader of this kind of this project. Though he is a pretty cool, fascinating guy. He's kind of like the guy that sort of spearheaded the Human Genome Project and stuff. But the problem is, like, he kind of weaved in like fiction stuff. Because at first, he like the first like little chapter is like a fictitious like element of like someone going to like the Russian steppe and seeing like a woolly mammoth, and I was so confused because I thought like somehow it happened. I'd like missed it, and I realized, oh no, this was just kind of like a made up thing. But some of the characters are pretty interesting, but the writing was just kind of boring and it doesn't really lead anywhere because they haven't really made that all that much progress on it. So okay, so that's basically it for that one. One that I really did enjoy was Barry Cunliffe's The Ancient Celts. This is almost like kind of like the standard work on the Celts in a lot of ways, but it is very well done. I've read another book by Barry Cunliffe. It's The Extraordinary Voyage of Pythias the Greek. As Pythias kind of traveled through many Celtic lands during like his kind of like geographic travels and cultural like historiography and stuff, which is pretty cool. He also has a book, I think, on the Druids, I want to say, as well. So I'm definitely gonna be picking up like the rest of his works at some point. This is, like I said, this if you want to learn about like the real Celts, like during like Latin and Hallstatt culture, from say 1000 BCE down to the Roman conquest and stuff. This is the textbook to go to. He does cover pretty much all of like kind of like Europe, including like obviously like the British Isles and stuff. But like I said, also including like kind of the Central European like Hallstatt culture and everything, which is really cool. Sometimes when people get into like Celtic histories, they're kind of like starting in the modern age and kind of going like backwards, and that's like I said, Celtic history goes back way, even pre like Roman, so in Europe. So yeah, definitely go check that one out if you actually want to learn lots about the Celts. And then one more book that I don't have is Legion versus Phalanx by Mike Cole. Mike Cole is like pretty well known as like a sci-fi and fantasy author. I think his fantasy series is like called The Armored Saint or something. But I saw Legion versus Phalanx, and it's it's a whole book on is the Legion, the Roman Legion, the maniples and whatever better than the heavily dense Greek phalanx. Of course, during this time between the Romans and the Greeks is actually, well, I guess it was Pyrrhus first, and then the armies of Macedon. So they were actually fighting kind of more of like the Alexandrian, Sarissa style Macedonian phalanx. It's not like kind of the classical Greek phalanxes from like the Persian wars. But anyways, we all know like technically the Legion has to be the winner because the legions are the ones that kind of like ended up conquering the Mediterranean stuff. But this book deals a deep dive into the 5 major battles between legionary forces and phalanx forces, which would have been the 3 in the Pyrrhic War, which would have been Heraclea, Asculum, and which were Pyrrhic victories. That's literally where the term Pyrrhic victories come from, because even though Pyrrhus won, he took like such heavy losses that it's kind of like hard to continue the campaign. So he kind of went over to Sicily. But then when he came back, then there was the Battle of Beneventum, which was probably like a draw, tactical draw, but you know, a tactical draw for like the invader is basically a loss. So the Romans, you know, win the Pyrrhic War. And then we go on to Cynocephalae and Pydna, which faces the Roman legions expanding over into Greece and Turkey. Well, I mean, I can't remember. No, I guess these ones wouldn't have been in Turkey, but these are both in Greece. But anyways, that's like, yeah, I'm just like rambling on all this like random history stuff. Anyways, these were victories for the Roman legions over the Macedonian phalanxes. But anyways, the 5 battles are described in pretty good detail, which is just a lot of fun. If you enjoy classical history, it's just kind of a cool, geeky deep dive into, you know, the different formations and that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed it, and it's definitely a popular history, so you can definitely get into it if you're not, you know, it's not like you don't have to like read Clausewitz or anything to like understand it. So, all right, let's go on to some of the books that I do have, which is only 4 of them. We got my very short introduction for this month was Forest. I enjoyed it pretty well. It didn't do quite as much in the sense of, I guess I was trying to learn more about like, I don't know, I really don't know, maybe more like the biological processes of forest per se, where this was a lot of more about, I don't even know how to explain it, I guess, more just about kind of like the preservation and changes of forest, like kind of over time, which in itself was actually kind of neat, because I pretty much learned, the big takeaway for me is that there's really no such thing as an old growth forest. Which is kind of an interesting concept, because a lot of times that gets thrown around with like secondary forest and old growth forest, you know, like when they're clear cut, and then if we like kind of let them be, it's a secondary forest, and it takes forever to turn into an old growth forest. But really, over long time scales, there's really no such thing as kind of like, you know, the standard forest for an area, or, you know, an old growth per se. They're kind of always in constant flux. We just seem to see it the way with like secondary forests and clear cuts and old growth, just because like our, you know, we're thinking in like human terms of like really short lifespans. But over like thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, big swathes of forest like constantly are just like always like evolving and changing. So like I said, it wasn't quite what I was looking for, but it was still really interesting. So definitely check that out if you're into the very short introductions. All right, I had 2 fantasy reads. We'll go with the one I didn't care for as much as Emily Duncan's Wicked Saints. I picked this up because it's like, you can just kind of tell by the title, or not the title, the like kind of the illustrations and stuff. It's like Eastern European kind of Slavic influences, which I don't think they get enough like representation in fantasy. Though if you saw some of my other videos, you probably know that I'm gonna start just trailing off of the fantasy bandwagon in general. But anyways, I wanted to, you know, have some Eastern European flavor. Like the setting was pretty cool. You definitely get that kind of like medieval Russian, kind of Ukrainian feel, which is what I was definitely like looking for, like kind of Lithuanian stuff. However, like just some of the characterization and like the romance and like a lot of fantasy books, I'm just like always just like cringing at. Basically, edgy equals hot in this book, so yeah, just take that. I mean, if you're into that, that's cool too, but it's just, you know, like I'm just reading them, I was like, The main premise is, I think the main character, she can like kind of talk to like the old gods and stuff, like literally like just like chat with them sometimes, but obviously there are people that want to, you know, use that to their own advantage, and you know, she's gotta like do stuff and not get caught and whatever. But anyways, like I said, it wasn't like particular my thing, but if you were looking for a Slavic kind of fantasy, definitely check it out. For my other fantasy, you can't go wrong, is The Fellowship of the Ring by Tolkien. Yeah, this is like one of the reasons why I still want to read fantasies, just for like Middle Earth and stuff. This was obviously a reread, but I think the last time I read The Fellowship of the Ring was like 5 or 6 years ago. So it's actually been quite a long time since I've read them. I definitely got to get to Two Towers, Return of the King later this year, maybe. Yeah, just, you can't really go wrong. It's just kind of a blast from the past, like, you know, whenever you read Tolkien. Especially if it's not, unless it is your first time, I guess, reading Tolkien. Otherwise, then you're in for a real treat. But yeah, still a treat when you're rereading it. Alright, and lastly, I read the second book in the Theodore Rex trilogy, or Theodore Roosevelt trilogy, Theodore Rex by Edmund Morris. I've already read The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, which was from his birth up to his ascendancy to the presidency, and the Colonel Roosevelt is from the end of the presidency to his death. This one covers, all the years that he was actually in office. And as you can see, they're pretty thick books with tons of citations and stuff. However, they are very well written. Theodore Roosevelt definitely wasn't the perfect character, definitely was not like, the perfect president, as if there ever, was a perfect president. So, one of the main things I enjoy about Theodore Roosevelt is his, love for nature and stuff, and his sort of expansion of, the whole, national state park projects, and a lot of, kind of ecosystem, laws and legislation that he was trying to, kind of get through with his, conservation efforts. The kind of, those, kind of the first, generation or two of, conservation was actually starting to enter kind of, the mainstream, kind of American thought there. So I thought that was really cool. One other takeaway from this book that I guess I never really thought about too much was how involved personally Theodore Roosevelt was with kind of the de-escalation of the Sino-Japanese War? Yeah, the Sino-Japanese War between Russia and Japan. And how personally involved he was with sort of the peace talks and stuff, where he was president. Well, I guess he was president too, but I mean, he was present for most of them, kind of being the liaison between the delegations and whatever. I just thought that was kind of a neat little aspect. I mean, I knew he was president during that, but I didn't realize quite how involved he was, and I guess it makes sense why he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize that year for his work in kind of ending that war between Russia and Japan. But yeah, definitely check that out if Theodore Roosevelt is kind of an interesting character that you want to learn about. Like I said, there is 3 books in this trilogy. Read the first one, this one, both really good books, and I will be on to Colonel Roosevelt once I pick that one up. So those are the 7 books that I read in February. Yeah, it wasn't my greatest month ever for sure, but like I said, I've more than made up for it since then with quarantine. But tell me what you guys think of any of the books. If you've read any of the authors or these titles, leave some comments down below. I'll be glad to talk to you about them. And if you can remember what your favorite book was from February, leave that down below. Always on the lookout for good recommendations, and whatever you're reading this month, always remember, read victoriously.